essay titled The Uber of Landscaping, A History. So come on up, Matt, and talk into this thing. We're recording it. I think it helps the projection of the voice as well, and then we're recording this, and so we will have a recording of this.
Great.
Yay, Matt.
Hey. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Irene. This has been a wonderful experience, wonderful last 10 months. I'm happy to get up here first and get this over with. And I've practiced this several times, but I probably will be self-editing it as I go through, so I will avoid that as much as possible. And I'll let everyone know that it only gets better from here, too. So if you don't enjoy this, everyone else is going to have better stuff. So, hey. Just trying to earn some sympathy up here. Okay, the Uber of Landscaping, A History. There are a few acts that breed loyalty, like the rescue of a bandana as a battlefield trophy. After a wound, a real bleeder, my under-the-table employer, J.R. Tuttle, took home the green rag I'd used as a weak tourniquet. The next day, he handed it back like a crown. The clean green rag was washed and stained with dark red veins. It's clean. Yeah, man, I said I'd wash it for you, Tuttle replied. You deserve it, 13. You're a fucking warrior. 13, my numbered nickname, always arrived in place of my given name. As the affectionate appellation indicated, JR had my back. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for in this life. JR claimed my numbered moniker's provenance, during a late night in Portland on our first fuzzy-edged mission. That trip was the first of several months that I'd spent working alongside JR, standing as a sort of consigliere that brought life to the man's nebulous visions. Sometimes that would be digging holes, sometimes that would mean making sure that we had the tools to dig, and sometimes that meant simply standing as a sounding board for JR's mad fantasies. I'm going to be the Uber of landscaping, JR would exclaim. How one made the leap to an international lawn service app from one man and a hoe, a landscaping business, via one ancient hand tool bungeed onto an old road bike, only JR knew. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. I first met JR at the end of 2017. I was a 38-year-old student, a graduate aspirant who ended up a UO duck chasing down a writing dream. If you know anything about Eugene, the city that surrounds the University of Oregon, you know that the town tilts to the strange side. Organic grocers and zombie homes spill over with artists and life's refugees. College students provide a vibrant pulse at the city's center, and country fair folk wrap its outskirts in permacultured vines and multicolored ribbon. Even here amongst the schemers and the dreamers, my friend and future boss, JR, stood out as an uncommon man. The Emerald City might have buzzed with a bizarre vibration, but Tuttle exuded an entrepreneurial flair that was all his own. Though the ideas could be amorphous, JR's enthusiasm and work ethic could bring his visions to life. It was my work for one of these business ventures that brought JR and I together. My first contact with the man was in response to an online Google survey, an application to earn a few $100s for a few days of hard labor over the December holiday. JR and his partner Steve sold potted Christmas trees, dug straight from the ground, root balls and all, to be delivered to the front porches of upper middle-class Eugene homes for $100 a pop. Excuse me. After the holiday, we'd pick the still-living plants up and resell them at a discount to the City Parks Department. Convenient, affordable, and offering a second life, potted Christmas trees were an easy echo act for green-minded folk in the Emerald City. They also fed a second revenue stream, like a Silicon Valley startup that sells cutting-edge tech, only to rebuy and then resell sunsetted hardware every year. Potted tree delivery applicants were asked 5 logistical questions and a 6th that featured JR's quintessential line of inquiry. Tell me why you're the X Factor. The X Factor is the connector, the letter that arrives when it's expected, and that thrives under close examination, I answered. I'm a well-traveled expat, able to exchange greetings with most anyone, X, Y, or any chromosome combination betwixt. With me next to you will exceed expectations for excellence and excitement. Dude, JR exclaimed in the subsequent phone interview, you're the man. We've got to go over your availability, but you've already nailed it. You are the X Factor. 2 weeks on, my first night of the academic holiday break commenced with a Portland road trip to pick up trucks that would be filled with trees the next day. As it turned out, JR matched his voice on the phone. an almost always exuberant grin above a double chin, shining eyes below a blonde receding hairline. X, can you drive? My license isn't exactly legal right now, JR asked. I didn't mind. I-5 is a straight shot, 90 miles of blacktop that follows the Willamette River north to Portland. We spent much of the 2-hour drive chatting about 2 out of 3 of JR's great loves, the Washington Capitals and how to speak with the female kind. You gotta be funny, but not too nice. You can't let them know you're interested. Chicks like to play hard to get, JR explained. How long have you known Steve? I asked about his business partner. Steve's the man. We used to play hockey together after I moved to Eugene from DC. He's moved up to Portland, so we don't hang out as much, but man, we used to kill it with the chicks. There was a palpable sense of separation there, a familiar fading of friendship as lives moved apart. JR, in this case, was the one left alone on the ice as Steve skated away to a larger pond. The plan that evening was to crash at Steve's, but Steve, it turned out, had no further vacancy than one couch, so JR offered to pay for a hotel. I cruised lamplit Portland streets while JR searched his cell phone for a vacancy. The Gateway Inn should be right over here somewhere. Oh shit, there it is, JR pointed as we were passing the place. I took a quick glance around at the vacant late evening road and whipped a U-turn right in the middle of what would normally be a busy street. Haha, there you go, JR nodded in approval. About 150 degrees into the 180-degree turn, however, a police cruiser popped out of an adjacent alley and pulled up to our rear. Shit, I thought, there goes that extra few $100 I was going to earn. JR began to apologize, but I shut him down. Don't worry about it, man. It was my decision, I said, turning into the hotel. A black police expedition pulled up behind us, but instead of slowing down, the SUV growled past my bumper and shot back out the entrance opposite to the exit. Berries and cherries lighting up the night like a rave under the Burnside Bridge. What the hell? Haha, did you see that, man? JR crowed. What the hell? Holy shit, did you see that? I wasn't so sure. You're not the X Factor, man. You're Lucky 13, Magic 13, the 13th dimension, that's what you are. What just happened? Let's go get you a room. You earned it, 13.
Turns out that didn't suck, Matt. All right. Jane is up next. Jane Schreiner is up next with her essay, Affair with a Carpenter.
Oh boy, those sounds already get my blood pressure up. Okay, I'm gonna have to deliver here, I can tell. The magic breath, pulling down the microphone, just a little cue from the boss. How's that? Everybody hear me all right? Okay, here we go. It happened like this. Walking through the new attic, smelling of sawdust and possibility, he turned and kissed me. With fire igniting deep in my core, I leaned into that kiss, ravenous, with hidden want. This moment had come, and we were here, poised on a crosswalk in a half-built attic open to the living room 25 feet below. What was I thinking? This man was one of the carpenters building our dream home in the country, and what madness takes over when chemistry draws you to another person. He looked me in the eye, admired my ideas, and laughed when I was funny. I felt seen, and I was lost in a fairy pool of magical want, a dangerous trajectory gaining momentum inside of me. Each morning as I turned off the dirt road to our house and onto the long driveway, I tricked myself into believing the tingles of excitement I felt were just about the house. After all, this was a dream coming true. This country setting, backing up to 2,000 glorious acres of Colorado foothills, scrub oaks and pines, was captivating. Gratitude filled me every time I saw that view. My life was full of caring for our 2 toddlers and 2 middle schoolers, along with navigating this construction project. Noticing this man and the slow burn I felt for him was easy to push into the recesses of my untended soul with so much keeping me busy. My husband Greg and I had always been at odds. Ours was the endless tale of an unhappy marriage. When deciding whether to build the house, we went back and forth over and over again. Do we get divorced or build the house? Neither one of us could decide to divorce for a myriad of reasons, so we did instead what we did best. We took on a big project instead. Greg ran our business and I ran everything else, which now included building a home, a barn, and a life outside the city for our 4 kids. We let that vision settle the debate. However, my need for loving kindness from a man was acute. Longing to be seen and wanted as a woman was the constant rumble keeping me off balance. You might ask, why did you marry this guy? I loved and admired Greg. I saw his brilliance, choosing not to see his inability to have an open-hearted, loving connection with a woman, me. As our years produced more children, I had 2 when we were married, and the practical side of life took over, it was easier to stay together, though my need to feel loved grew in desperation and hiding inside of me. I became friends with this tight-knit crew of 4 hardworking carpenters on our project site over the months they worked there. Having fun was something else I was short on, and we laughed together. I brought them donuts, and I soaked up every bit I could learn about how our house was being built. We had an easy camaraderie. With only 2 restaurants close to the work site, some days we would end up at the same place for lunch. One day I asked, hey, can I join you guys, as I walked in the diner and they were sitting by the door. We started having lunch together off and on after that, whether at Bud's for a burger or O'Brien's for the special of the day. Creating this house was a wonderful project and I loved it, making choices about wall placement, heat runs, or choosing flooring. Seeing our nest come together was exciting and I gained a tremendous sense of myself. Nurturing our family was always my true north, and building this wonderful home took that to a dazzling next level. Yet, as unanswered needs will look for soothing, and often in the wrong places, mine took over that day, in the newly built attic smelling of pine. Yearning burst out of its hiding place, and an affair began. From this point on, my gut sours with regret and shame for what I put my family through. At first glimpse, I'd call it insanity, compulsion, an irresistible urge. Inside my head, the rendezvous and covert plans to meet were separate from the normal workings of my brain. Soccer practice? Check. Team snacks? Check. Laundry folded? Check. Stopping to meet with Mark on a bench in Willow Springs open space along the roadside? Not on that list to check. This part of my life was in some alternate universe that never crossed over into my sanctioned reality. Sitting on that old wooden bench with my 22-month-old sleeping in her car seat in our big Suburban, I would be drawn into yet another kiss. Even as I was saying, I can't meet you anymore, this has to stop, I'd lean against him, and the desperation to feel loved would subside for a few moments. Like an addict, it's hard to let go of what brings relief to that wounded place inside. As ice and heat relieve an aching back, being loved by Mark was pain relief for me. Those lifelong fissures of need to be valued and accepted wanted filling. But living out of congruence with my values was not the answer, which would soon smack us all in the face. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. We talk a lot about the heart of writing being vulnerability, and that was a really good example of that, right? Thank you very much, Jane. Jane came all the way from Colorado to join us today. All right. Kay Corzin is going to share a piece of her historical fiction novel in progress called Broken Glass.
Yes.
It's been years since I spoke in a microphone, so here goes. Okay. Agata calls. She explains that hundreds of Ukrainian women and children are showing up in Krakow. They are coming by car and by train. In the next few days, the number is expected to increase to the thousands. The cathedral has set up tents to feed and house them until more suitable arrangements can be made. Could Maria come down and help serve food? Maria agrees. On the local news, she has been watching a continuous column of people arriving in Poland. She is glad to have something positive to do instead of marinating in fear, unable to look away from the television screen. She searches her cupboards for items that might be of use. She chooses an unopened box of cookies, a couple of bags of barley and buckwheat groats, a jar of grated horseradish, and a bag of dried mushrooms. She divides them between 2 grocery bags so as to evenly distribute their weight, and then throws in an apron that was washed last week. It is not far to the cathedral, so she will walk, but it is better to have a balanced load. Maria does not have to guess which of the multiple white tents that have blossomed in the rain-slick cathedral courtyard is the kitchen tent. She can smell the sweet scent of sautéed onions and the sharp note of strong chicken stock, underscored by a hint of burnt coffee. Agata meets her at the entry of the tent, where other volunteers are cutting up vegetables and slicing bread. The mushrooms, barley, and buckwheat are quickly added to 2 of the pots of soup simmering on the camp stoves that have been set up in the kitchen tent. The cookies will be gone in a minute in the dining tent, so Agata offers them to the volunteers working in the kitchen. The horseradish jar gets put in a box that is shoved under the work table. Agata directs Maria to an opening to another larger tent where tables and benches have been set up so people can sit down and eat. There is a queue at the serving table, which is stacked with styrofoam bowls, plastic spoons, and paper napkins, followed by baskets of sliced bread. At the end of the table, a volunteer ladles soup into a bowl as each person passes. Maria puts on her apron and accepts the ladle from a grateful young woman. She says something to Maria, but Maria can barely distinguish the volunteer's voice from the welter of different languages being spoken, babies crying, and the screech of benches as they are pushed forward and back on the metal panel floors. Then there is also the litany of thank yous, spoken in Ukrainian, English, and sometimes Polish, as people take the filled bowls. It occurs to Maria that, after a while, no matter which language, thank you sounds the same. Maria nods to each person in return. The mothers with bags under their eyes, juggling bundled up babies as toddlers cling to their coats, affect Maria the most. Fortunately, someone either in front or in back of the group puts the family soup bowls on one of the trays at the end of the serving table and follows them to where they choose to sit. At one point, after finishing her meal, a blonde teenage girl stands by the end of the table to carry the trays of mothers or grandparents who need help. She does this for about 30 minutes before a woman who looks like her grandmother collects her. The teenager reminded Maria of her granddaughter. After 3 hours and many pots of soup, she was relieved of her ladle by a young man who is probably a college student. She goes back to the kitchen tent to sign up for another shift tomorrow. Maria attended early Mass in the small Catholic church in her community. Last night, after returning home from her shift at the Cathedral Refugee Center, she called her granddaughter, Maja, to ask her to volunteer at the center the next day, since it is Sunday and she would not have school. It is only a short distance from Maria's local church to her son's house. For once, Maja does not keep Maria waiting too long, only 10 minutes as she finishes braiding her hair. As Maja searches the closet by the door, Maria warns, "Don't put on your good coat. The soup spills. The children grab you because they're hungry and scared. You don't want to get your best coat dirty. Wear a sweater. You can wash a sweater. And the tents are warm with the cooking and all the people." "Babcha, I don't want to look shabby." No one cares how you look. What they care about is sitting down and eating. Your job will be to make sure families have a tray to carry their food to a table, and if you have to, carry the tray for them. On Sunday, there were even more women and children than on Saturday. Maria was worried that they would run out of food, but fortunately, food donations kept showing up throughout the day. The soups became weird combinations of ingredients, but at least they were warm and filling. She was proud that Maja did not complain once, despite going back and forth between the kitchen, the food service table, and the dining tables, during the entire 3-hour shift without a break. Monday morning was milder, so Maria asked if she could take a break from working in the cathedral's dining tent and work outside as a greeter of sorts, directing Ukrainian refugees to the dining tents or to the tents where volunteers were helping people find lodging or apply for a Polish ID number to give them access to public services. She was still on her feet most of the shift, but she welcomed being away from the food smells that kept her feeling hungry all day. She could not afford to buy a lot of new clothes on her small teacher's pension, so she watched her weight carefully. Today's visitors to the cathedral complex were no different than the previous days, only there were even more of them. Agata came out around lunchtime and asked Maria if she could take the next shift as greeter after having lunch in the dining tent. Maria understood and agreed. On her own morning shift as greeter, she had created a game to keep herself engaged, guessing how the Ukrainians had reached Krakow. She used the amount of luggage and if they had pets to determine how they had traveled. Little luggage and no pets meant they had come by train. The reverse meant they had probably come in cars. Many of the people coming up to her for assistance often shared their stories, giving her the opportunity to discover if she had guessed correctly. Thank you.
Nice job, Kay. So I mentioned that was historical fiction, but it's clearly a history that's unfolding in the present. And this is something that Kay, like many people, is very passionate about. And we see things presented to us in images and rhetoric and so on and so forth, but Kay is accessing the humanitarian side of this, the humanity beneath it, and that we connect with that no matter where it is. Next up we have Mark Wagner, who's going to read to us from his sci-fi fantasy novel called Thin Places. And he's going to read chapter 12 called Madness, right?
Chapter 12, Madness. Monica returned to her office overlooking the emergency department parking lot where she had just said goodbye to Carl. Guilt and fear coursed through her in alternating pulses of nausea and spine-tingling heat. She stared, eyes straining into the gathering gloom, as if by force of will or by keenness of gaze she could bring Carl back to her, turn back the clock, give herself more time to think of something other than reckless exile. She glanced around her office. Her diploma from Duke University School of Medicine, her gilded certificates from the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, it would all go up in smoke. She could imagine flames licking around the edges of each framed accolade. She had committed career suicide. She had defied the orders of a superior officer. She had sent a helpless patient out into the wide world in his pajamas. Foobar. Flecks of rain spat against the window, the sound of darts hitting home on a corkboard. Monica felt dazed by her audacity, crazed by her stupidity. She would stay here and face the music. She would face the consequences of her actions like a good soldier. Disgraced, proud. Here I stand, I can do no other. When Weiss's transport team arrived and failed to find Carl waiting for them at the ED entrance, they would make their way up here and find her. And then? Monica turned away from her diplomas and peered out the window again. Rain gathered in rivulets, coursing down at random intervals, now distorting, now magnifying her view until it was a watercolor landscape of mixed ash and feathery gray hues. A streaky black SUV, a Chevy Suburban by the look of it, lurched into the ED parking lot. Its headlights bobbed and flickered as it came to a stop. It was unmarked. A cold prickle crept down Monica's spine. 4 doors swung open, disgorging 4 brawny men in dark suits, their jackets curiously cut. for concealed carry, no doubt. Each man touched his ear and disturbed there a corkscrew of quivering wire that dove neatly into the high and tight collar of his turtleneck. The driver slammed his door. A sudden gust of wind blew aside his lapel like a gaping flap of skin, and Monica caught a glimpse of oiled gunmetal, glinting wetly under the arc lights of the darkening parking lot. She froze, heart ticking. Then a kind of electricity took over her limbs, and Monica found herself tearing off her lab coat and grabbing things. Her purse, her keys, a book from the bookshelf behind which she kept a final envelope of cash, her phone, which she picked up, cursed, and tossed in the trash. She flung her white coat over a brass hook by the door, donned a black hoodie that said "Beautiful Badass, a gift from David," and sprinted to the stairwell. Duty? Honor? No, she would not linger to face the music. Hell no. It was more honorable not to let yourself get bested by men with guns, good soldier. Her legs pummeled down the steel stairs like jackhammers, clanging and booming down all 7 flights. Instinct told her to avoid elevators, hallways, cul-de-sacs, anywhere she might get trapped. She burst through the heavy doors on the ground floor and out into the rain, pulling her hood tight over her head and splashing her way pell-mell through growing puddles to Liberty Garage. Her Jeep was parked on the first floor, thank God for Saturdays. The structure was a ghost town. She pulled the key fob from her purse and listened for the welcome chirp of the car alarm deactivating. She flung herself into the driver's seat and punched the ignition. The Jeep's meaty engine roared. In a heartbeat, Monica was in gear and bumping down the short ramp over clacking tire spikes to Brown Drive and on to Wisconsin Avenue. Her phone was gone, but that was just as well. From here on out, she'd have to use the unregistered GPS deck to navigate anyway. She pressed the glowing on button and spoke her destination, nearest Greyhound bus station. A map glittered into place on the dash, followed by a soft female voice speaking in a British accent. In 1.2 miles, turn right on Capitol Beltway. Monica canceled the cloying voice. It grated against the growing din in her head that was racing like the engine under her feet, trying desperately to think of what to do next. She had no plan. All she could think was, get Carl. Get Carl. She shifted into overdrive and pressed the accelerator. The engine whined as the tachometer climbed, and the speedometer began to quaver past 70, then 80 miles per hour. Aside from the chuffing gouts of water that flared from her tires and tugged at the steering wheel, the roads were clear. She nearly missed the bus station when it hove into view. If not for the alert on her GPS proclaiming "Arrived" in bright red letters, she certainly would have missed it. It was a dull, low-slung affair that looked all the more dingy and forgettable for the rain. She careened into the parking lot, coming to a thundering stop, her headlights shining garishly into the station's glassed-in waiting area. A thin-limbed figure in blue sat hunched and alone, motionless in the corner. Carl. Monica threw open her door and jumped out of the Jeep. Rain soaked her hair and trickled down her neck. She cupped her hands and yelled at the top of her lungs, loud enough to be heard through the glass. Carl! She pointed to the Jeep. Get in! Carl stood, at first shuffling forward to the window, then running. He placed his face against the glass and visored his eyes with his hands. Get in, Carl! She shouted again. He looked hesitant. Trust me. I'm not going to take you back. Get in the car! Carl exited the building, his hospital pajamas at first billowing around him like a clown suit, then going flat and sodden in the downpour. She flung open the passenger door, and he tumbled in. Monica slammed the Jeep into reverse and swung the nose around. Her windshield wipers slung arcs of water like manic sailors bailing out a sunken deck in a storm. She punched the accelerator, and Carl's head whipped against the seat. In seconds, they were hurtling down Route 410 at near hydroplaning speeds. Monica gripped the steering wheel until the bones bleached through her hands. A skeletal helmsman, battling the angry seas for all eternity, drenched in cataracts of white spray. They were on the run. What madness! For the first time, Monica noticed the book she had grabbed on the way out of the office, the one behind which she'd hidden the money. It rocked back and forth between the seats. The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. A ponderous tome. What runaway train of subconscious events had caused her hand to reach out and grasp this, of all books, when all she needed was the money? How had she not noticed the weight of it? She had no idea. It had been less than 20 minutes since she left the hospital. 20 minutes. 20 lifetimes. Already, she did not recognize herself. We're not heading west, Dr. Moore. I know. There's something we need first. Someone.
Thank you, Mark. Who wants to know what happens next? Yeah. So they say in writing, all you have to do is make sure that the person reads the next sentence, right? And Mark is doing that through character and tension. And there's an enormous amount. I mean, you can all take a breath now, right? Yeah. That was a lot of tension in that piece. So far we've seen a couple of essays, some historical fiction, sci-fi, fantasy. So as Irene mentioned, when we get to the middle of the forge, people get to pick what they want to do. And they often gravitate to something that they had no idea that they wanted to do, which is, I think, the case of Hannah. Hannah gravitated towards flash fiction and poetry. And so she's going to share a couple of short, so flash fiction is short writing. And she's going to share 2 short pieces and a poem. Hannah Lara.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the fiction. My first piece is called Life Cycles. When I notice my marriage ending, I crave the sea. My body longs for salt. At first, I just sprinkle some on my food, but then I started dumping it in my coffee every morning, hoarding the sample-size sachets from diners, pouring it into a bowl and eating it with a spoon, like cereal. Now, I abandon the spoon and use only my hands. It's messy, marriage, and my fingers, everything coated in brine. We fell in love on the banks of the Santasiero, summers spent with our toes buried in gravelly sand, skin to skin, sun-tanned and warm. Bright smiles, laughter through sips of wine, hiding memories like treasures in the reeds. Those were easy breathing days. We married and bought a tiny house on the river's edge. I thought it would be everything I would ever need. But when water stills, life dulls, things stagnate. Now my days are stuffy and insufferably familiar. I'm wading through monotony, cooking, cleaning, repeating, suffocating in the shallows. When I dream, the sea roars in my ears. I'm itchy when I wake up. One day, I find a silver scale on the back of my neck, glossy and smooth, stuck to me like a popcorn shell. I run my fingertip around it, coaxing it with my nail. The skin underneath buzzes. I picture the ocean. This morning, I find new scales, 3 on my left shoulder blade, 4 more drifting down the front of my neck like pearls. I stare at my body in the mirror. My skin squeezes my ribs. I can't breathe. The clutter on the countertop crowds me. There's a rustling as my husband gets out of bed. He stands in the doorway, looking through my naked reflection. He doesn't mention my scales. I wonder if he even sees them. Breakfast? He asks. There's leftover salmon in the fridge. You could have it with eggs, I say. Again with the fucking leftovers, he says, turning away. Don't you cook anymore? His words wash over me. I clench my fists. My palms sting as more scales surface. They pierce my skin urgently, gasping for air. I relax around them and they come faster, in waves. Metallic plates coat my fingers. I trace my life with my scales. The unmade bed, the ring of water on my nightstand, a forgotten cup, a deserted wedding band. Everything feels different, harder, sharper. My mouth waters and I realize today is the day I leave my husband for the ocean. I dress, but don't pack a bag. I enter a kitchen that stinks of rot. I choke on its thickness as I walk to the front door. My husband crouches over the counter, shoving pieces of cold fish in his mouth. You've changed, he says. He doesn't look up. What the fuck are you doing all day? What am I supposed to eat? The house is trashed. I say nothing and keep walking. Deeper water, more salt. As I climb into my car, I pull a packet from my purse and dump it in my mouth. I drive the grit into my palate and press it against my teeth. My tongue swells, reveling in the rawness. I take the old highway along the river, speeding and leaning into its curves. I arrive at a coastal village that is even smaller than the life I'm leaving, but feels infinitely freer, everything billowing in the ocean air. I park on the beach and don't bother turning the car off. I walk towards the ocean, the waves crashing and growing louder with each step. I break into a run, stripping clothes off as my feet slap the wet sand. When I reach the water, they flatten and stretch. My toes web, my arms melt into my sides. The cold should shock me, but it doesn't. My skin tingles deliciously, the hairs on my head ripple and fall away, and more silver scales cascade down my scalp, over my back, between my disappearing legs. Shiny fractals replace my body. I dive into the waves and swallow. Salt, salt, salt. Swimming further into the sea, breathing deeply for the first time in months. This next piece is called "This Product Has Been Discontinued. Sorry for the Inconvenience." I stare at a wall of hair product in the cosmetics aisle. The plastic bottles are almost stoic in their stillness, arranged shoulder to shoulder like suspects in a lineup. I scan the rows diligently, left to right, focusing on each label. I move from the A's to the B's to the C's. I can't find my favorite shampoo. My throat tightens. I take a deep breath. When I get to the Z's, I start again from the top, thinking I missed it, but it's not there. I take out my phone and Google it. The first hit is an article, Neutrogena Clarifying Shampoo discontinued due to formaldehyde-producing preservative. DMDM-hydantonin. It's a common ingredient, evidently. Problem is, it releases trace amounts of formaldehyde over time, and the FDA took issue with the living soaking their scalps in it. The letters on my phone swirl as I try to make sense of them. I've been using this shampoo for 10 years. There's still a bottle in a shower 2 hours south of here in the big house with the angry husband I abandoned. I just forgot to pack it. And now I find out I've been embalming myself for a decade. Tears blur my vision, and now I'm crying in the middle of an unfamiliar grocery store faced with unfamiliar shampoos, and I have to choose one because my hair is filthy and I need a shower. I'm a fucking adult. I take another deep breath and blink. I focus on the S's. Now is as good a time as any to switch to Suave. I wipe my face with the back of my hand, pull a bottle down, and check the label. No formaldehyde. And this is my last piece I'll share. It's a poem. It's called Prophecy. I drown alone at a bar with cocktail sticks shaped like oars. One drifts in my old-fashioned amongst ice melt and a bloated maraschino cherry. I take it and imagine myself climbing into a tiny boat and rowing away. I carry the paddle in my pocket, run my fingers over the rough edges every day until it becomes a part of my hand. My talisman turns to omen, a wooden resolve, a drive to the dock, to get in a boat. Atop the wake, I break it. Yes!
Thank you, Hannah. That was great. So we start in the Forge at the very beginning. We start with sounds, and then we go to words, and then we go to sentences. And when you, words are important. Every word is important. But when you write that short, every word is even more important. So a lot of time went into those pieces, and agonizing over word choice and so on and so forth. And how many of you felt like you were growing scales? How many of you need a drink of something now? Yeah, I mean, so that sensory, that's how we affect our readers, right? Next, we have Christine Thomas, who's reading from her mystery thriller novel, The Depths of Franklin Lake.
Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. Maddie slammed her blue backpack and black basketball shoes on the cement floor of the boys' locker room. She slumped onto the wooden bench, placed her head on her lap, then jerked upright, nauseated by the sight of the jockstrap wedged under the bench. Ripples of cold sweat traversed her ruddy face and trickled down her neck and spine. Blue dots flickered like short-circuited Christmas lights blurring her vision. Her mind raced from one thought to the next, not knowing what to do or where to start. She was trapped, caught between Carl's demands to get his phone back or face his consequences, and Coach Emma's instructions to be in the gym in 15 minutes. She knew Emma no longer had the phone. Who had it? Coach Will? Isabella? Maddie needed to get the phone back as much as Carl did, maybe more. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, she remembered her mom's advice to start with the easiest task first. That would be changing out of her uniform into her street clothes, a uniform she would no longer be able to wear after hitting Emma. No, she thought, a uniform she would never wear again because of Carl. She bit her bottom lip and rubbed her swollen eyes. She couldn't cry again. This wasn't the time. There wasn't time. Several teammates walked by her, casting disappointing stares as she rummaged through her backpack, yanking out her blue jeans, a white turtleneck, a teal cotton sweatshirt. She waited for a bathroom stall to be vacant. Charlotte, Jane, Eliza, and Hannah entered the locker room, whispering to one another, then stopped when they saw Maddie. They sat on benches on the other side of the room and quickly pulled their snow pants over their uniforms and zipped their ski parkas. They left without putting on their snow boots. Maddie rubbed her aching stomach, not shocked they had kept her secret. They knew if they shared it with anybody, they would have to explain how they knew what they did, and that would mean telling where they went on Saturday night. And if their parents or coaches found out, there'd be hell to pay, and that would ruin their plans for this year and high school next year. Plans the 5 of them made for their grades and basketball and volleyball. Plans, if the 4 of them said nothing, they could still achieve. No, Maddie thought, their keeping her secret wasn't a surprise. The betrayal was. Just another broken promise. Carl warned her this would happen. She tried to remember her favorite line from The Merchant of Venice, something about loyalty reigning as the queen in a friendship, guiding hearts with grace and compassion. Shakespeare obviously didn't know anything about teenage girls, Maddie thought. On Saturday night, Carl lectured her about her loyalty to him and her teammates, told her most people's loyalty and love were conditional, and how people would turn against her if they learned the truth. Tangled in her thoughts, Maddie didn't notice Jenny standing next to her holding a gift bag decorated with snowmen. Some girl said to give this to you, Jenny said, handing the bag to Mandy. She said to open it now and hurry up and meet her in the car. What did the girl look like, Maddie said, clutching the bag. Didn't notice, Jenny said, walking away. Didn't care. Maddie gathered her clothes and hurried into a bathroom stall. She closed and locked the black metal door. She opened the envelope resting on the green and red tissue paper and removed the card, recognizing Carl's blockish handwriting. The card read, "Sweetheart, here's a reminder of what happens when you disobey me. Get my phone back." A metallic stench stung her nostrils. Clenching and unclenching her hands, she inhaled, exhaled, and then cautiously removed the tissue paper. Her hand brushed against a metal ring and a plastic clip. Yanking the object out of the bag, she gasped and dropped Cooper's blue collar, splattered with dark brown smudges. A bullet casing rested at the bottom of the bag. Grabbing her sweatshirt, she placed it over her mouth to muffle her sobs. Waves of sharp, stabbing pains pulsed like electrical shocks through her head. She leaned against the metal door, trying to slow her rapid breathing. Get it together, she told herself. She couldn't think about Cooper. Not now. She had to find the phone before anything else happened. Yanking toilet paper from the roll, she picked up the dog collar and placed it in the bag, then wiped a smudge from the floor. Removing her uniform, she got dressed, trying to ignore the bruises and bites on her stomach and breast from Saturday night's initiation. That's what Carl called it, her initiation to be a member of his elite team. A team she didn't know she was trying out for. A team, Carl warned, that it was wiser for her to be on it than off it. The inside of her chapped thighs throbbed, triggering a numbness that made her body feel tethered by the weight of her fear. She braced her hands on the walls to lower her body, sat on the toilet seat's edge, and clasped her hands together and tried to pray, for what she didn't know. A sickening dread wrapped her in a shroud of hatred for herself, her life, her choices. She hated her mom for dying, for leaving her with Darlene, hating having no one else she could talk to, except Carl. She hated her mom for trying to teach her the life lessons through sports, especially in her last months. Every day was a cram course meant to be taught in a lifetime. At basketball practice last June, her mom wheeled her oxygen tank onto the court. In front of everyone, she told Maddie Her timing was off and her backdoor passes because she was trying to force it. You need to read your teammates, her mom had said. Know what they're going to do before they do. Anticipate how the defense will react. Her mom told Maddie that she was the conductor, orchestrating the play by faking a pass to one player as another player slipped behind the defense to catch the ball for an easy basket. She told her mom she didn't understand. If you know your opponent's weakness, her mom said, you can catch them off guard. That's how you win. Standing and collecting her things, Maddie knew her mom's advice wouldn't work against Carl. Stupidly, she tried to run away from him on Saturday night, only getting 2 steps away when he caught her, pinned her against him, wrapped his arms around her chest, and whispered in her ear that he had let her win everything. The one-on-one basketball games, the video games, miniature golf, card games, everything. He laughed at her and called her gullible and predicted that her days of winning him. He laughed at her and called her gullible and predictable, and that her days of winning against him were over. The only back door in this situation that she knew would work was the one from the locker room to the parking lot. First, somehow, she needed to find his phone. Next, walk out the back door and leave with Carl. If she failed to do those 2 things, she knew without a doubt he would honor his word, and whatever he did next would be her fault.
Nice job, Christine. Thank you very much. Yeah, want to know what happens next? Christine, so Joyce Carol Oates said that she wrote, was it 10,000 pages to get a page or something like that? Something like this. Christine's our Joyce Carol Oates. This piece has been so fun to watch. I mean, it's not a fun subject, but it's been so fun to watch Christine. Christine's a reporter, right? So Christine works in the world of objectivity and neutrality and all that sort of stuff, right? So she's very passionate about this subject, and the thing that she is writing has morphed so dramatically through the course of this event that it's really fantastic to see, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where that's going to end up. And I have to get my next. All right, so next we have Jean Harkin, and Jean is going to read us three haibun. And haibun is a Japanese form that is usually a short little story, anecdote, imagery, something like that, followed by haiku. So she's going to read us 3 of those, and she will tell us the titles of those as we go. Right? All right, Jean.
I'm not scared. "25 below zero. Early December brought on its usual attack of frigid air from Alaska and northern Canada. It would sweep over Montana's border and settle on us for 3 weeks every December. Nothing and nobody wanted to work. Anything made of metal, our cars, trucks, or snowmobiles, would complain with cracks and creaks as they attempted to obey their starters. The trick was to get the engines to fire without a battery kill. Our bodies didn't feel much better. Even those of us who lived to be outside found it difficult to appreciate the quick jog from the grocery store doors to our cars through air heavy with frozen exhaust. No one dared shut their engines off. Many of us augmented our overwrought furnaces with wood-fired stoves. We went through cords of chopped pine at an alarmed pace. When we did have to go outside to split a few rounds or hatchet some kindling, our fingers soon ached from the cold and frozen axe handles. Our woolen mittens, worn inside thick elk hide overmitts, soon became ice, stiff and slippery. We loaded our arms and ran for the house in dread for the exquisite, sharp pain in fingers and toes as they thawed. After weeks of minus 35 degrees to minus 40 highs and minus 50 nights,
I had had enough. I needed a Santasiero. The thermometer had gotten all the way up to -25. I bundled up in a large down jacket, the kind that make you look like the Michelin Man, and a thick wool ski hat, insulated mittens, long johns, ski pants with insulated overshell. At last, I stuffed my woolly feet into sorrels and put on my sunglasses. Out the door I went. I puffed my way uphill to reach a winter canvas of hayfield covered in sparkles of pure white snow. Above it, a field of sky so intensely blue it seemed solid. I felt I could reach up and touch it. The air was pure, devoid of everything but oxygen. Not a drop of moisture could possibly be squeezed out of it. Nothing. Yet I was surrounded by crystals. Their miniature facets sparkled with a force and clarity that cut diamonds could only wish to display. Nearly weightless, they hung suspended in sunlight. Cars, trucks, birth through frozen fog. Oil pan heaters dangle umbilical cords. Plug into lifelines overnight. Grief. It took years of study and practice in the arts of yoga, its breath work and meditations, before I felt sane again after he was gone. The benefits so strong, I trained for 3 years to become a yoga teacher. Now, at long last, my life was decorated by a full palette of colors. I felt alive and had begun to paint again. It was an ordinary day of errands, shop for groceries, and a hunt for a yoga center. There was supposed to be one in this new town. As I left the hardware store parking lot, I stopped for traffic. I waited to make a left turn. From somewhere in my psyche, a thought leaked out about what it would feel like to get hit by this oncoming semi-truck traveling too fast for town traffic. It would end my life. It was just a flash, but it betrayed a wound still festering from a life altered by a tragic accident. The move to an unfamiliar place where I knew not a single person except my husband had picked an emotional scab raw. My hands did not steer toward the truck. My right foot stayed pressed to the brake pedal. Death rode one bullet. My son, not a deer, instant death. I struggle to live. Showtime. The mountains seemed huge to me, and they are. The northeast edge of town is protected by a 9,000-foot ridge. About halfway down toward the valley floor is an enormous M written in whitewashed boulders to salute the university. Often on hot, late summer afternoons, a thunderhead rises up from behind the ridge. Some of these gargantuan cumulonimbus clouds put on great dramatic displays. People pour out of doors and stroll around town to enjoy these spectacular shows. It is an informal parade of chatty neighbors. They watch the sky and the children as they try to keep up with the melt of their favorite ice cream cones. They exclaim wonder and barely hidden trepidation at the size and speed of the continuous rise. It is an explosion of cloud that dwarfs mountains. It roils and rumbles and crackles lightning as bright as white turns into an ominous, deep, dark purple. In direct complement, the entire scene of town and community are lit by a bright, rich, golden low sun. The Montanans know that when this monster is through showing off, it would thrust down massive thunderbolts. Zuth javelins mean run for cover. These are dangerous and a prelude to hail and enormous amounts of hard rain. You don't want to be outside. I'd better get my strawberry ice cream right now. A Goliath contest, mountain and thunder, panic, watch, or run.
Thank you, Jean. Jean came to us as a poet and found her way into prose, found that she liked writing prose, and this haibun form is a great way to combine both of those things. Our final reader today is Jake Jakubik, who's going to be reading a nonfiction piece called The Mission.
By the time the crew found the two snowmobilers, only one of them was alive. I started writing the timeline of the mission when Mike, the on-duty mission control officer and a semi-retired pastor, pulled me aside. "Grab a cup of coffee and let's put this one to bed before you fall over," he said. We adjourned to a quiet corner and parked ourselves across from each other at a small table. Between us were the mission information files, a pot of coffee, and some stale donuts. We sat quietly for a moment. I think the gravity of the mission, its conclusion, and our own fatigue had us dialed down for a little while. Mike was the first to speak. "You're a Vietnam vet, right?" I nodded. "Tell me about it." I told him there wasn't much to tell. I wasn't a grunt, a jungle ground pounder. I flew in the Navy. "Up north?" he asked. I told him no, that I was mostly on the fringes, in and out, doing resupply missions for Navy units, including special ops units. I said I drew combat pay for 3 years, but really was pretty lucky, never got seriously hit. Told him that one time we thought we took a round, but when we tried to get a medal or a citation, we were told it was just a hole where a rivet had fallen out. I told him a story that I often remembered, one that happened close to the time I left active duty. When I met Tom, who was a naval flight officer, an NFO like me. What Tom told me I still remember to this day, but for a twist of fate. I could have been there. Tom was an NFO like me. We had the exact same training path at about the same time. He chose multi-engine land-based aircraft, the same choice as me. He got orders to the squadron at NKP, Nakam Phanom, and I got stashed for a year, and then I got my choice of duty stations and squadrons. I went to Hawaii, he went to NKP. He learned how to shoot a .50 caliber machine gun from the back of a moving pickup truck in the desert, training for the guns the P-2 would carry. He also trained in using a World War II Norden bomb sight, the most accurate bomb sight for what they were targeting. I had been on the peripheral of actual combat in the zone. I had been there, but I have not been in it like he had. I often have moments reflecting on the why of it all. Maybe my Christian upbringing is hiding behind the door, telling me that I had a greater purpose for my existence, and it's my job to find out the answer, and only then will it become meaningful. Sometimes, mostly when a seemingly great tragedy strikes, I ask the heavens, just what the hell is my mission here? 50 years. It's been good for the most part. Just when things seem to be too good, there are the moments. Brief recollections, the memories, not the dramatic fire and brimstone finger pointing by some ghostly cloaked figure or the cold sweats, just a brief memory at random moments. A mental snapshot of a jungle green camouflage painted P-2 sitting on a parking apron with the jungle in the background. Or Tom's crewmate, knowing he was going in, but giving a final salute. or a Jeep with 4 body bags and stretchers. Then there are the good memories, flying the jet trainers, the Mai Tai I drank on the Lanai when I was first stationed in Hawaii. And Vivian, in a long flowing white dress, surprising Joe by standing in for the official Navy taxi director one night, directing Joe's plane to the parking spot, and then Joe hopping out and giving her a Hollywood kiss and embrace on the tarmac, with the whole world watching, a scene right out of a Hollywood movie. Then there's the wall. I have never been there, but I see it vividly in my brain. I need to go there. I need to pay my respects, but I'm not sure if I have paid my dues. When I told Mike about Tom and his experience and how our career paths were almost parallel to the time he got shot down and lost his crewmates, and how I had the luck of the draw and he didn't, Mike responded in a way that surprised me. "I thought so," he said. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked him. I had worked with Mike enough that informality was a common denominator, and besides, he wasn't wearing his collar. "You get really involved with a fervor on these missions," he said. "You sometimes need a break, and we have to drag you away. You spent 3 years in the combat zone, in and out, seeing the good with the very bad, and then you came home more or less like a normal guy. Now you're trying to pay the debt, so to speak, in search and rescue. So here's the deal. You did your part. You did what was asked of you. You do not owe anybody anything. It's called survivor's guilt. Some guys just never get over it, and it can really negatively affect your life if you don't get a handle on it. Talking about it is a good start, and sometimes you can talk it over with the same guy that I used to talk with at my former place of employment. The important point is to deal with it and not live with it." I gave Mike's words a lot of thought afterwards and wondered if maybe that has been my motivation. I never thought I had survivor's guilt. I just thought I was lucky. And if my deeds are not going to pay the dues, then maybe the words that I leave behind will.
Thank you, Jake. Jake has had a very colorful life and is full of stories. And when he came to us, he just wanted to get those stories down on paper. And I think what we found was that by doing that, he started to figure out what they were about. And I think that's really one of the keys with writing is to understand ourselves, right, and to be able to share that with other people. All right, thank you, everyone. Good, another round of applause. All right, all the Smithys, we call them Smithys because it's the forge, and
we
that's
like Smithys.
because that's funny. So all the Smithys, come on up here.
Where do you want us? Just
Line up.
line up here.
Just
Like bottles of shampoo.
All right, we have certificates of completion for our Smithys, as well as, because it's the forge, we have oven mitts that say the forge on them. So
That's fantastic.
Jane Schreiner.
Thank you. Imagine that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
we also have little stickers that you can put on your car or your laptop, or you can put these on your bathroom mirror to remind you every morning.
To get up and write.
Right.
Go to the desk. Mark Wagner. Thank you. Miss Jean Harkin. Christine Thomas. And Laura. Kate Thorson.
Congratulations, now you can stop writing. This is cool.
Go.
Don't move.
That's her favorite.
Yes, that's for you guys.
Thanks, Cap.
Yeah, here's something for you guys. You guys stay up here.
Yeah. Stay up here, mentors. We need you. The 10 months may be over, but we need you forever.
Yeah, right.
So this is from all of us. We have a card for Ellen. Where's Ellen on
Well,
Zoom?
yeah,
Ellen.
for that.
This is for Mike.
Thank you very much.
This is, oh, wait. This is for Irene. Thank you. And this is for the both of you guys. That's from Mike.
How did you know? It's my very, very favorite.
You did a little investigative research.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's cake time. And so congratulate these people and tell them what a great job they did, and ask Jake to tell you a story.
He's got him.
And if anybody wants to know anything about the experience, which has been phenomenal, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in my 69 years, come on up and talk to any one of us. We'd love to share it.
These guys are just really great to work with.
They are, yeah.
They tolerated me.